What secrets lie behind Claire's life in the werewolf territory? Can she escape and find her pack? With Wyatt's help, will she successfully return to the arms of her love, Kieran? Unlock the secret life of a werewolf college student. Subscribe now for exclusive insights. Chapter 28. Take this, Wyatt said, handing me the additional blanket from his bag. I shook my head. No, it's all right. This one is enough. Emma was next to us against the gathering of rocks, already fast asleep. She was exhausted, I could tell by the look on her face as she slept. She hadn't spoken much our entire journey either. What we'd put her through had to be a lot to process. Even though we had saved her from Axel's pack, Wyatt and I both knew that if they ever caught us we would all be dead. You sure? Wyatt asked with his arm still outstretched with the blanket. I'm sure. It's not that cold out. I shifted my blanket over my legs and arms. It was a good thing the weather was unproblematic, because even if it were any cooler, we couldn't have built a fire. It would have drawn too much attention to us. There is nothing that sticks out more than a fire blazing in the dark of night. Emma had consumed 2 apples and a granola bar right before she crashed, and Wyatt and I each had 1 granola bar and a bottle of water. We still had enough food to last us at least 2 more days, if we went sparing. If worst came to worst though, one of us could hunt to keep the rest sustained until we reached our destination. If I was right, we only had about 3 more days until we found the perilous pack territory. Hopefully Kieran would be there waiting on me, and not trying to pull off a rescue mission, risking his own life for hours. I must have looked very concerned because Wyatt reached over and grabbed my hand to reassure me. We'll get there, Claire. Don't worry about it so much. I'll keep you safe from Daniel and Axel. Once you reach your wolf, we'll be a lot faster and make better time. It's not happened yet. I don't know if it ever will. It feels like I'm still trapped. I have no control over my shifting. I picked up some dirt and threw it back to the ground. You will. Give it time. You'll do it. He pulled back his hand and lay back against his bag, using it as a pillow. When you go to sleep, he said, I'll shift. It's easier for me to keep you safe in my wolf form, that way the slightest sound or movement will wake me up. I feel like I should be helping you keep guard. I'm sorry I can't. I adjusted my bag and lay on it, copying Wyatt. Don't be sorry for things you can't help. There is no point, he said gently. I'll take care of you. You should get some rest. I yawned and closed my eyes. All right. I pulled the blanket up to my neck. I'll carry Emma tomorrow. You can take the bags. It should be easier for you to move. If you think it will help, he said. Good night, Claire. Good night, Wyatt. Emma woke up before me the next morning and shook me awake. She needed to use the bathroom, and she was hungry. Wyatt was nowhere to be found by the time we were packed and ready to go. We waited for him. He probably went to hunt something before we started our day up again. I would only become worried if he didn't show up in the next half hour. He knew we had to start out before daybreak, or our chances of being seen would be increased drastically. Axel's wolves were probably already out searching for us as it was. My stomach rolled and I reached into my bag for a vitamin. Are you okay? Emma asked after I took it. You look sick. I gave her a reassuring nod and a fake smile. I'm fine. I just get this way sometimes. Where is Wyatt? She asked, looking as far through the woods as her eyes would reach. He's close. There was a stirring inside me that told me he was. It was an instinct I thought I'd long lost since being taken. It sent a thrill through me at what that could possibly mean. Sensing Wyatt was no small thing. It meant my pack link was coming back, which meant other things could come back too. Like my wolf. Claire, Wyatt's voice broke through the morning air. My eyes scanned the wakening light for him. Then he appeared next to me from the opposite direction I was looking. I jumped. "Sorry," he said. He looked from me to Emma then back again. "Is everyone rested and ready to go?" "We were waiting on you," I told him. He picked up the bags from the ground and threw them over his shoulder. I scouted the area. There is no one close to us. There is another river up ahead we'll have to cross. He paused for a moment, gazing off into the trees then back at me. When I got there, I discovered something. Emma's eyes brightened at Wyatt's tone. She could sense something in it as I had. Whatever he had found out there, it had to be good. What was it? "Our location," he said, a slight smile appearing on his lips. "We are closer to Alpha Clint's pack than we are to ours. If what I remember is correct, we can be at Clint's by early morning if nothing slows us down. We'll have to make a slight change in our direction, but at this point, it's the best thing for us. The sooner we are out of these woods the better. Plus Axel is expecting us to run straight to our pack. Best to throw him off a little, don't you think?" I jumped at that and screamed with delight. "Clint is nearby. Why didn't you say so sooner? Kieran would want us to go to him. I know Kieran and Clint will keep us safe." I was shouting every word with excitement. This was much better news than I had anticipated. We just might stand a chance out here after all. There is too much distance between us for me to contact Kieran through our pack link. "I'll call him personally as soon as we reach Clint's land," he said. I nodded. I couldn't believe it. We were so close now. Just a 1 day instead of 3. I couldn't be any happier if I tried. "Good. We are ready to go." He nodded and repositioned the bags on his shoulder. "I'll lead the way." A few hours into our journey, there was still no sign of Axel or his wolves. The closer we go to Clint's the better I was beginning to feel. Something inside of me finally felt like it was loosening, shaking itself awake. Since being with Daniel and Axel I felt like I was half empty inside, just barely the shell of someone I used to be. But the more distance I put between us, the more I felt myself again. The more I was becoming Claire Warren. That put a smile on my face. "You're looking oddly cheery considering the situation we are in," Wyatt said with a trace of a smile on his lips. "Like being chased by a pack of wolves, do you?" My face grew hot. "No. I didn't know he had been watching me. I'm just hopeful." The sun was shining down on us, giving us some warmth on the cool fall day. My shoulders were a pale pink and the tip of Emma's nose was also the same color. I could see how tired she was getting from the walk. Wyatt and I both wanted breaks, and since Wyatt hadn't sensed any threats in the last half hour, he let her walk on her own without him carrying her. "I'm hungry," Emma said. "Can we stop and eat?" I looked to Wyatt for his decision since he seemed to be the one leading this pack, and he nodded. "We'll stop just up ahead. There should be a pound around here somewhere." We followed him farther into the woods until finally we hit a clearing, just where he thought it should be. It was wide and mossy and beautiful. A good-sized pond sat right at its center. I could see the fish swimming just below the surface. There were many. "Wow," Emma said, wide-eyed. "The fish population is really heavy here. Not many people walk this far into the woods to fish." "That probably has a lot to do with it," Wyatt said. He lowered himself onto the ground and pulled a canteen from his bag and took a sip. "I'm going to go scan the area," I told him. I grabbed up Emma's bag from Wyatt and handed it to her. "I'll be right back. Eat something and take a rest." She nodded and sat down next to Wyatt before I made my way through the woods just up ahead of us. He really needed to rest, and lately I felt I was pulling my own weight. I scanned a perimeter of about half a mile in each direction surrounding us. There was no sign of Axel, or any of the wolves so far. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing, or a bad thing. I'd almost expected them to find us already, or at least be close by. I had sensed nothing other than the strange, but distantly familiar stirrings of something dormant being awoken in me. It gave this odd surge of energy I hadn't realized I'd been missing all this time. A thought passed through my mind almost as quickly as it had appeared. It was gone. It sent chills up my spine. If Axel hasn't found us yet, that could only mean one thing. He's planning something big. He wouldn't remain silent otherwise. Maybe he searched for us then returned to the pack with a bigger, more malicious plan. More than hurt us, he probably wanted to make us pay, to make us suffer the consequences of what we have done. He'll go after Kieran, or my family, or even Wyatt's family to make us pay. Then after he had ripped away the most important things in our lives, well, then he'd come for us. I could only hope that Wyatt was right, and he was still unprepared to go into war with perilous pack, so it would buy us some time, and I could contact Kieran. Maybe we could form some kind of plan with the pack. If anyone could protect our pack, it was Kieran. When I returned back to the water where Wyatt and Emma were resting, the ground shook. It wasn't an obvious earthquake shake, but more like a subtle, slight shake. For a moment I debated if it was just my imagination, or maybe I was just feeling dizzy. I looked to Wyatt for some kind of answer, but he only looked into the fish pound, acting as though nothing ever happened. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was just my mind after all. I shook my head of it. I didn't need to start showing signs of mental instability right now. I'd been through a lot, but for Emma's sake and my own, I needed to keep it together just a little longer. Wyatt finally noticed me and stood up. "You're back." "Fine, anything?" I shook my head. "No. All quiet on the Western Front." I glanced at Emma. "Is she doing okay?" He glanced at her and nodded. "She's fine. But she'll be better when we're in the protection of allies." I looked past him into the woods I'd recently scanned. "How much further now?" "The time is still the same. We'll arrive early morning or at best woe." "Claire, are you all right?" He was rushing to my side trying to steady me before I hit the ground. I leaned into his body, as the arm around me led me over next to Emma. I felt unsteady, dizzy. The ground shook again, I told him slowly. My head soon began to throb. I buried it in my hands. "Claire, are you okay?" Emma's small voice whispered. I don't know. Something's happening, I think." Then, like something that has been slowly chipping away inside of me, the ice barrier broke and slow warmth started spreading through my body. It began at my chest and spider-webbed from there to every inch of my body until it reached the tips of my toes and fingertips. I gasped for breath. "What the air? I can't get enough air. Where did it all go?" It was as if I just got through with a 10-mile race. My lungs were burning for the lack of oxygen. "Oh, God. I'm suffocating." Wyatt placed his hands on the sides of my face. I tried to look at him, but everything was spinning. Emma whimpered next to me. "Hey, Claire, stay with me. Look at me." "Just keep your eyes on mine," Wyatt said. I tried. I really tried. But then the nausea came and I felt like I was going to hurl. I couldn't finish my sentence because that was it. There were no more words. Only vomit. And it was bad. The worst I'd felt in weeks. It splashed at the ground. "Claire," Wyatt sounded slightly panicked. His hands were still on my face. "What's happening to her?" Emma was way more panicked than Wyatt. "Is she going to die?" "No," Wyatt said firmly. "She's not going to die. No one is going to die. She's going to be fine. She just needs to cool off." Wyatt, I mumbled. The world was beginning to blur. I tried to search for his face. You're fine. You're going to be fine. His voice was meant to reassure me, but even I could pick out the slight doubt in his voice. He had no idea what was happening to me any more than I did. We both needed to face the facts though. This could very well be the end for me. Baby, stay with me. I love you. Stay with me. Wyatt was lightly shaking me. Kieran. When did he get here? Then I was on my back with the sky high above me and Kieran. He moved into my line of sight. He smiled weakly at me. His eyes were concerned then panicked. My heart swelled with joy. Kieran. You're here. You came for me. How did you find us? Just lay back. Be quiet. You'll be okay after this passes. What is it? I asked him. What's happening to me? You're changing. I scrunched up my nose. Changing? Into what? Your wolf. It's happening again. Just like it did the first time you changed. You're whole again. Kieran's voice merged with Wyatt's. Just breathe through it. It will be over soon enough. Were they talking at the same time? I tried to focus on Kieran again, but he blurred out of sight. I couldn't get a clear picture of him anymore. He started backing away. I immediately panicked. No. Don't leave me. I reached for him. I was able to grab onto him before he made it away. Claire, you're shifting. Emma and I need to move away. It was only then I realized how bad I was shaking. My leg snapped, then my arm, then my back. I screamed out in pain. They snapped again, transforming into something else. I screamed. The pain. It was becoming too much. There was searing pain up and down my spine. I let go of Kieran. I told him. I love you. Just in case I didn't make it out of this alive, he needed to know. He needed to know how I felt. Claire, it's okay, Wyatt said. He sounded so far away now. Everything was going dark. It was like the sky right before a storm. Then it got even darker. More like the sky at dusk. It's the fever. You're hallucinating. When you shift, it'll break. Break, I mumbled. Snap. I screamed again. I am breaking. I'm dying. I'm sure I'm dying. Kieran, come back to me, I cried. Please. Don't leave me alone here. They say when you die that everything starts to go dark. Then all the noise begins to fade away into the night. And finally, once everything has vanished, your consciousness, it starts to slip away too. Then there is silence and nothingness. No sensations. Nothing to remind you that you are still alive. No beating of your heart. Nothing. You're just gone. I used to dream of falling through the dark night sky when I was a little girl. At first, it was like I was flying. I don't know how I got there, or how I started flying in the first place, but I was doing it. It was only after I realized I was doing it, that I panicked and I started to fall through the air, my body falling down toward nothing. Just one big, black hole. My stomach felt as if it were in my throat. The whole way down I worried about all the things I hadn't done in my life. All the things I never said. All my regrets in life were on my mind. All the things I would never get to do. 'Cause I knew that as soon as my body found somewhere to land, that I would be no more. I would break. That's when I woke up. Right before I hit the ground. Right before I died. I'd sit up in my bed panting and screaming. My mom and dad would rushing in my room and see me sitting there, and they'd hold me and tell me it was okay. It was just a dream. And that was what always calmed me. What brought me back to the edge of reality? It was the realization that they in fact were right. I was not falling, they were there holding me, I was really okay. And I always would be. But this is different. I was most certainly not dreaming, and I wasn't sure if I was all right, or ever would be. I didn't even know where I was. Claire. A voice sounded in the back of my mind. Claire. Yes, I wanted to say. I didn't have a working voice. Claire. Each call of my name felt it was leading me somewhere. Guiding me to the place I needed to be. Claire. Back to the edge of reality. Yes. I'm here. Claire. It's closer now. Almost close enough to touch. Wake up. You're okay. I'm okay, I repeated to myself. Can you move? I don't know. Can I? I tried. My arm twitched. Yes. Next I tried clear out the darkness. To open my eyes. To see anything. Good. You're doing well. I recognized the voice now. It was Wyatt. Light peeked in between my lashes. I squinted. It hurt. I felt a presence shift over me. The light darkened. It made seeing easier. I managed to open my eyes a little wider. Little by little I was able to zoom in on my surroundings. I was outside on the ground. That much I knew. Wyatt's face was in front of me, inches from mine. I struggled to get up on my elbows and he moved away. He looked relieved to see me up. I was worried about you. How do you feel? Like I was hit by a Mack truck. I winced as I got into a sitting position. Beside me Emma was asleep. Her eyes were tear-streaked. Their kid was worried. She thought you were dead, he explained. So did I. What happened? The world around me was brighter, crisper, and prettier. It was a vision I recognized and had missed so much. Tears started forming in my eyes. I was back together again. I was me. You shifted and blacked out. I guess whatever Daniel did to you reset your body to before your first shift. It happened all over again. And there in the back on my mind, I felt her. She was there now. My wolf. I could feel her energy. Her smile. Her delight. Tears spilled out between my eyes. I missed her so much. Wyatt saw me and wrapped his arms around me. Hey. You made it. You should be happy. I am happy, I told him. That's why I'm crying. He smiled. You're back. How long was I out? I tried to make myself sound clearer. My voice was rough, somewhat off. About 4 hours. I nearly shot up to my feet. What? 4 hours? We've lost so much time. I've lost so much time. I don't remember any of it. Don't worry. Axel or Daniel hasn't come for us. That didn't make me feel any better. That's exactly what worries me. Emma shifted on her blanket. I lowered my voice. This doesn't seem right. This whole situation seems off. Wyatt frowned. Yeah. I know what you mean. I got to my feet. We should probably get going then. The longer we are out here, the more we put ourselves at risk. He nodded and stood with me. Now that you can shift, we'll run. We can get there faster. I'll take Emma on my back and you'll follow me. With any luck we'll make it to Clint's in half a day. That sounded like a pretty good plan. A breeze blew and I realized that I was only wrapped in a thin blanket around me. Which meant I had been completely naked in front of Wyatt, and I couldn't even remember it. I blushed and grabbed at the makeshift covering. I put that on you when you returned from the woods. You took off after you shifted, and when you returned Emma was asleep from crying. You went to sleep too and shifted back in your sleep. I thought it was best to cover you before the kid woke up. It was. But Wyatt saw every single inch of me. Yes. Thank you. It's probably best we keep that between ourselves, he added. What he meant was, don't tell Kieran. And I had to agree. Wyatt was probably in enough hot water as it was. I didn't want him to getting killed over something that wasn't his fault. Of course. He glanced at Emma. You should get her up. I'll gather our stuff. I nodded. Let's be quick. I walked over next to her and dropped down in front of her. She was breathing steadily then rapidly. She was probably dreaming if I had to guess. Placed my hand on her and gently shook her awake. When she opened her eyes she stared at me. She was clearly relieved. She sat up quickly with a smile and wrapped her arms around my neck. You're okay? I was so scared. I thought you were gonna die. I'm glad you didn't. I was taken aback by her sudden rush of words. It was the most I'd heard say at one time since I met her. I shook with silent laughter and wrapped my arms around her just as tight as she was holding me. Believe me, so am I. Wyatt picked up our things and came to stand next to us as we rose to our feet. I gathered our blankets and stuffed them into a bag. He looked at me. You ready for this, Claire? We have a lot of ground to cover before night settles in. I nodded. He didn't even need to ask. Of course. Adrenaline was beginning to course through me. In less than a day I'll be in Kieran's arms again. For that, I'm ready for anything. Ready as I'll ever be. Chapter 29. The day was wearing on and Wyatt and I had arrived on Alpha Clint's territory before sundown. Both of us were in our wolf forms, Emma on Wyatt's back. Just inside the grounds we were met by a pack of wolves. None of them I recognized from Clint's trip to our pack a few weeks ago. The large black wolf with a splash of white between his eyes, who I assumed was the second or third in command of the other wolves, bared his teeth at us and took a threatening step doorward. Wyatt quickly blocked his path by jumping between us. He growled back and then he shifted. He was in full nudity in front of me, waiting patiently while the black and white wolf also shifted. He was a tall man, with broad muscles and a strip of white through his black locks. He was fit for his age. If I had to guess, he was probably mid-40s. A young boy his side who had also shifted, looked very much like him minus the strip of white. He had to be the tall man's son. Who are you? Tall man asked. State your purpose here. Wyatt was quick to speak. I am Beta Wyatt Ford of Kieran Knight's pack. He nodded toward me and Emma then. This is his mate Claire and our friend Emma. We are here to request an audience and refuge with Alpha Clint Collins. Tall man turned toward his son then to the other wolves who had still not changed. They seemed to be having some kind of silent conversation. After a moment of silence, the man turned back to us. If you are from Kieran Knight's pack, why did he not notify our Alpha of your arrival? We know nothing of it. As you know it's customary to yes, I know. Wyatt said impatiently. It's customary to announce our coming, but we didn't have that luxury. We were in a bit of a hurry. Please, tell him we are here. It is imperative that we speak as soon as possible. Tall man glanced beside him again to the other wolves then nodded. His eyes met Wyatt's again. Alpha Clint isn't here. He's on business with a neighboring pack. I'll notify Luna Kalen you are here. If she wishes to see you, you'll be allowed through. Seeming to be the very best response we would get, Wyatt nodded to him and three wolves quickly ran off toward the estate, possibly to retrieve Kieran. At first I didn't understand why they didn't just mind speak to her, and have her come on her own, but then I realized that Alpha Clint probably ordered his wolves not to let Kieran walk around their territory on her own. Trespassers could break through, and if there were enough of them, they could take her easily. There seemed to be a stare down and a quiet assessment of us while we waited. Emma was stiff and quiet on Wyatt's back, not daring to move. Tall man kept looking between Wyatt, Emma and me, trying to figure out our story and possibly how we all ended up together there. What circumstances could have warranted us coming unannounced? "Arlo, what is this about?" Kaylin's voice rang through the trees with the 3 wolves by her side. She was looking directly at Tall Man. So that was his name, Arlo. It was only a second before her eyes landed on us. She froze only for a moment, took us in, surprised, then rushed over to us. "Kaylin," Wyatt said, relieved, as she stopped in front of us. "Who is this?" She looked from me to Emma, then back to me again. I was temporarily confused by her question of my identity until I remembered that she had never seen me in my wolf before. Of course she wouldn't know who I was. "This is Claire," he answered. "And this is Emma." "Claire," she said, surprised. "I didn't recognize you like that." "I'm sorry." I nodded in her direction and she smiles. "Kaylin, it's important that we speak to Clint right away." "When will he be back?" Wyatt asks. She looked at him. "I don't know. I was expecting him before nightfall, but that's quickly approaching and I haven't heard from him. It could be as late as tomorrow morning." She looked Wyatt over, taking in his naked form to no embarrassment, and frowned. She must be used to seeing naked wolves. It clearly had no effect on her. "You all look worn and tired. What happened to you? Where is Kieran?" "We've been running all day," Wyatt answered for us. "There has been a bit of a situation. May we come inside?" She looked toward her home and blushed with embarrassment. "Of course. I should have offered. Please, come in. We'll get you 3 some clothes and food, then we'll talk." "Thank you," Wyatt said appreciatively, and we followed her inside with a trail of wolves behind us. Upon entering the mansion, we were greeted by the faces of more strangers. I still hadn't recognized anyone that came to our pack before. Perhaps they were the wolves who were traveling with Clint. Kaylin led me up to her room and gave me some of her clothes to wear. When I came out of her room, I was wearing a silk green top, a pair of jeans and brown sandals. It was the best I had looked or felt in days. Emma was by my side, clean too, as we were led down to the kitchen, where Wyatt was waiting in a set of clean clothes, of borrowed clean clothes, possibly Clint's, or another wolf's. There was a plate filled with different types of sandwiches, and chips, and even some carrot sticks for Emma. Tall glasses of tea also sat by our food, and I realized how parched I was. We sat down and consumed our food quickly, and when we were done, Wyatt began the story of what happened. Claire was taken from her old pack. When we visited them, he launched into the whole thing, not leaving out a single important detail. Telling her about my past with Daniel, what happened at Axel's pack, and finally our escape. She focused intently on his every word, and when he was done, she was frozen in her seat, a mix of shock, anger and sadness on her face. "I'm so sorry, Claire," she said to me. "We had no idea about any of this. How you must have felt being in Axel's clutches, I can't imagine." She shook her head. "He needs to be taken care of. Allowing him to live has only made things worse. No doubt he's planning to retaliate as soon as possible." "No doubt," Wyatt agreed. Kaylin focused her eyes on me. "How are you? Coping with this, I mean." My stomach began to roll. I am fine. Or I will be when I see Kieran." She nodded. "Yes. We need to call him, get him here as soon as possible." I don't want to risk you running into Axel trying to get to Kieran on your own. She started to stand up until Wyatt stopped her. Let me, he said. I should be the one. I told him I would keep her safe. I got up and started to protest that I should be the one to call him, that I was his mate, that I needed to hear his voice again soon or I was gonna lose it more than I already had, but another wave of nausea hit me and I nearly kneeled over from it. Kieran rushed to my side. Whoa. Are you okay? You should sit back down. She glanced at Wyatt, who looked as worried as Kieran was. Get her some water. He made haste to get it to me and I barely took 2 sips and all my lunch came rushing up and covered the wood-covered floor. Help me get her upstairs, she told Wyatt. I'll have someone clean this up. He didn't argue. He picked me up carefully and carried me bridal style up a flight of stairs and into a large bedroom. He placed me on a soft bed as Kieran pulled back the covers. She draped them over me before rushing out of the room and returning with a cool cloth to place on my head. She needs to see a doctor, Wyatt said. She doesn't look good. Thanks, I say sarcastically, looking at him. You know what I mean. We need to know what's wrong. I shake my head. No, we don't. I already know what's wrong. No need to worry. I need to talk to Kieran. Can you call him now? Kieran looked at me carefully for a moment, trying to decipher something before letting out a long breath and agreeing. All right. Wyatt, call him. He'll want to be here. After explaining to Wyatt where Clint's office was, he raced off to make the call. How long? She asked me when we were alone. How long what? How long have you known you were pregnant? That brought me up short. What? Why would you think that? She shrugged. Just a guess. How long? I glanced down at the covers and sigh. I really wanted Kieran to know first. Things never go as planned though. Not long. She sat up straighter and cleared her throat awkwardly. It's not I mean she looked away. Kieran is the I nodded. The father. Yes. I never slept with Daniel. It didn't come to that. I prayed a silent prayer of thanks. Things could have been a lot worse for me there. I'm glad they weren't. She adjusted the cloth on my head. Kieran is gonna be so happy, you know. After everything that's happened, this will be exactly what he needs. You two will make wonderful parents. I hope so. Lately I didn't know if I'd be good at anything. I couldn't even keep myself safe. You will. Never doubt that. I nodded, not seeing any point in arguing with her. I didn't have the strength for it anyway. I just needed to calm my stomach and breathe. Soon after, Wyatt popped his head back inside the door and waited for Kieran's consent before rushing in. He's on his way, Wyatt announced as he entered the room. His eyes were in me. Good. As soon as Clint arrives, we'll talk strategies for Axel's capture. I promise, Claire, he won't get away with this. I nodded. Kieran looked up at Wyatt standing beside me, watching me, and cleared her throat. We should probably let you rest. As soon as Kieran gets here, I promise we'll wake you. She had no arguments from me. I needed some rest. Okay. When Wyatt didn't make any movement to leave the room, Kieran nudged him in the arm. It broke him from his trance or thoughts or whatever was going on with him and made his way toward the door and out of the room. Kieran stayed behind. He seems to be taking his job seriously, taking care of you, I mean. He doesn't like to let you out of his sight, she stated. He owes it to Kieran. She raised her eyebrows. Are you sure that's it? That caused me to frown. What do you mean? Nothing, except he acts like you're more than just a job. He seems to genuinely care about you. I mean, we are friends. It makes sense. For whatever reason she seems to give up the notion of trying to convince me of something, and sighs. Okay, whatever you say. Just be careful. You'll want to lock that stuff down before Kieran gets here. He's already going to be over the deep end anyway. I yawn. Sure. I don't know what's she going on about. You don't see it, do you? I just barely hear her voice as I begin drifting off to sleep. Wyatt. I paced the hallway in front of Claire's door, possibly wearing a hole in the red carpet. It wasn't until Kieran steps through the door and closes it behind her that I stop moving. She looks at me through searching eyes and crosses her arms. For whatever reason, she looks upset. Is she okay? I could barely contain the shaking in my voice. She'll be fine. Though I can't say the same for you. I frown. What? She walks down the hallway toward Clint's office and motions after her. Come on. We need to talk. Confused, I forced myself to follow until we reached the office. She closed the door behind us before taking a seat at Clint's desk. She motioned to the chair across from her. What's this about? I took the seat. You are treading on paper-thin ice, Wyatt. You of all people should know better. I froze, my veins turning to ice. The look on her face tells me all I need to know. But how did she find out? For the sake of my life, I decided to lie. I don't understand. See, I don't believe you. I think you understand perfectly. Her hand trailed along the leather-bound books on the desk and she sighed. Don't be stupid, Wyatt. Not only is she your best friend's mate, she's also your Luna. This will never go anywhere good. With all due respect, Kieran, I don't think this is any of my business. Perhaps not, but for your sake, you need to fix this. For your friend's sake, you need to fix this. How do you think Kieran is going to feel when he sees that longing in your eyes for his mate? He'll kill you, Wyatt. She really does know. I sighed and ran my hand through my hair. How do I even explain this? I can't even begin to. It won't help matters. All I can say to her is, it's not as bad as what you're thinking. You have no idea what I'm thinking. I'm not in love with Claire. She's beautiful and any wolf would be lucky to have her, but that wolf isn't me. I know that. It's just I don't even know what I'm going with this. I want to know what it's like, to feel something so powerful for someone to have a mate. She gasps so silently I almost think I have imagined it and covers her mouth. Kieran knows me. She knows everything I've been through and the struggles I've had in finding my mate. She'd always ask me every time she and Alpha Clint visited our pack. She worried about me. But that was just her a nurturer and a worrier. She always felt like she had to take care of everyone. Oh, Wyatt. Of course. Of course you do. I can see the pity in her eyes, and it's exactly why I didn't want to tell her or anyone for that matter. I know it can't be easy, not having your mate. But you have to believe you'll find her. I see Kieran and Claire, I began, and it makes me so jealous. I see how much they care and love each other, but it's not anything I can understand, I can only watch. What they have is so beautiful and so natural, and I just wonder if I will ever have that. She looked like she wanted to reach across the desk and take my hand, but thought better of it and pulled back. You're still young. I've known most people who haven't found their mates until they reached middle age. And I know people who have never found their mate. I could be one of them. She shook her head, the pity still there. I sighed and stood up. I have to get out of here. I need some air. I don't want to think about it. I never did. Where are you going? She asked, standing up after me. I need to walk, some fresh air. I just need out. She nodded in understanding. Okay. If that's what you want. It's what I need. I'll see you later. I'll be around, waiting for Kieran. I quickly make my way out of the suffocating room, with a million things on my mind. Chapter 30. It was well after supper by the time the nausea wore off, and I was beginning to feel more like myself than I had been in the past weeks. My wolf was still slightly on edge about seeing Kieran again. We both had missed him immensely. When 10 o'clock rolled around, we were beginning to think he wasn't coming, and that's when my wolf's ears perked and my heartbeat sped up. We had been here for 7 hours. If the distance was as Kieran said it was, he should have been here 2 hours ago. Now he was close. We knew it. I also knew he was tired, and anxious and angry and relived. He was a whole bundle of emotions that I couldn't even begin to separate, or understand yet. Kieran burst through my door as soon as I stepped out of the bathroom, wearing a freshly washed, flowing sundress that she lent me after my shower. It was the most comfortable I had felt in days. I was finally clean again. She smiled at me and clasped her hands together excitedly. He's here. One of the wolves spotted him just north of here. He'll arrive at any moment. Are you ready to see him? My heart leaped. Always, I whispered. I'm always ready. And it was true. That's why without any other words I rushed from the room, with energy brimming just under my skin. I couldn't wait for him to find me. I would find him first. I followed my instincts to the side door of the house that led to a huge fenced-inside yard, with a huge iron gate with a wolf's head mounted on the front. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie, and yet it was so beautiful all at the same time. I pushed my way past it and let it clink shut behind me. The cool blades of grass between my toes didn't even deter me from my mission. At that point I felt him even closer than before, and my wolf nearly leaped out of my chest. Any minute now he would make an appearance just over the hillside, and I would be here waiting. A soft wind blew, throwing his scent all around me around. He was right there. And that's when I saw him. But not just him, he wasn't alone. Beside him were Alpha Clint and Dorian. And directly behind them, spread out in a large mass, were the rest of Kieran's best fighters. As soon as Leland saw me, his eyes lit up and Kieran's soon followed. And that's when he leaped from his wolf form into his human one and ran at me at full speed. One would think he was about to run me over if they didn't know him. When he was just a breath's distance apart, we threw our arms around each other, and our mouths met. His lips burned mine with the heat of a passion burning with intensity from each other's absence. His wolf had missed me as much as mine had missed him, and it was enthralling to experience. He lifted me off the ground in one swift motion and spun me around, and then with one more quick, but intense, kiss he sat me back down. I let my hands travel down his bare torso, and soon to his biceps, and I gripped them tight. I didn't ever want to let this man go ever again. Claire, he breathed, resting his head against mine. It was enough to send shivers down my spine and back. I love you, I told him in response. I love you so much. I can't even begin to tell you how much I love you. I love you so much I lost myself. My wolf lost it, Claire. Without you. He could even bring himself to finish the sentence. He winced in pain. Sure, I told him, bringing my hands up to cup his face. I'm here now and we'll never be sep. My voice faltered when I saw the blood on my hands and now on his face. It was wet and sticky, and my nostrils filled with a coppery scent that made my stomach roll. And that's when I noticed the rest of the wolves too. Nearly 50 wolves stood before me, all of them covered in blood, some more than others. It was a sight I had never saw in my life. It was frightening. I dropped my hands from Kieran and stepped away. What? I swallowed. What happened? I stuttered. All of them. Clint looked worse than all of them except Kieran. I looked at him again. The entire left side of his body was covered in blood. How had I not noticed it before? Perhaps my wolf was in such a high overseeing Kieran that I didn't notice. Now that I did notice though, it looked bad. Really bad. He had dried blood from his left rib cage to his ankles. I could see that most of it was from a mostly healed wound of 4 claw marks. The rest, I couldn't even gauge where it came from. It was in odd places, like splashes from another incident. It's okay. I'm okay, he said slowly. It isn't all mine. What happened? I repeated a bit stronger this time. We had a run-in with. Oh God. Kaylin screamed from the same iron gate I bust through earlier. She was running toward Clint, eyes blurry with tears. She didn't seem to mind the blood, as she threw her arms around her mate. What did you do? Are you all right? I'll get the pack doctor. No. He quickly stopped her with his voice. I'm fine. It isn't even my blood. He stopped short and glanced back at Kieran, who nodded at him to continue. It belongs to Tobias, one of Axel's lackeys. My heart thundered as I spun to Kieran. What? When did you see Tobias? We crossed paths with them on our way here. Clint spotted them first and was engaged in a fight when we arrived shortly after. And that's when you were hurt. He nodded. It was a surprise attack. I was jumped by another wolf. I gasped. Don't worry, he wasn't a problem for long. He's dead now. I don't understand. How did you survive? Axel is ruthless. He would have never let you walk away from a fight with him unless you killed him. Did you? This time Clint spoke up. He didn't have much of a choice. If he hadn't left his pack to be slaughtered, he would be dead too. If he didn't have the numbers, we would have had him. We'll find him. Don't worry, Kieran assured me. He can't run forever. We've sent some wolves ahead to feel out his territory. We are taking prisoners. We'll have the answers we need by the end of the week. We plan to question everyone. Did anyone else survive? What about Daniel? Kieran was quick to answer, and there was a certain coldness to his voice that sent chills through me. He's gone. I killed him. He was void of remorse. He spoke as if he was speaking of an insect that made its was inside his house. He stuttered me for a reaction, but all I felt was shock. Daniel was dead. Kieran had killed him. He's dead, I repeated almost in disbelief. Kieran nodded. Does that bother you? Again he stuttered me. I'm just surprised, I guess, I told him. I didn't really know what to feel. Did I really expect Daniel's story to end this way? Sure, he was a delusional, but he had lost it when he lost Jasmine and his baby. If I were to lose my baby too, would I be in the right frame of mind? Maybe instead of death, all he needed was help. Now we have only one real threat. Axel. He's next. And we'll question the rest of his pack by whatever means necessary to find out where he's hiding. They have to know something. By whatever means necessary. I knew what that meant. It meant a lot of wolves would suffer, and probably even die if Kieran didn't get the information he was looking for. And if Axel didn't get back to his pack before Perilous Pack did, then one of those wolves that would suffer would be my friend, someone I had grown to care about of the past few weeks. Celia. My stomach dropped. Kieran, you can't. There are good wolves there. Some that can't help being there. Kids. He nodded. We've taken that into consideration. None of the children will be harmed, but all will be questioned. And Celia, I added. Don't harm her. She can't help what Axel has done. She's a good person. His face twitched. I can't imagine any mate of Axel having a good bone in their body. But I know her, I argued. She is innocent. She was hardly in any position to go up against her mate. If not for her, I might still be at the underground pack. He seemed to consider that for a moment, but his expression didn't change. We'll take that into consideration when we talk to her. I'll let you know what I decide. His words echoed back to me a little harsher than he meant them, I'm sure. You mean, what we decide? He sighed, and I noticed Kieran looked tired. Besides, when he first swept me off the ground and into his arms, this was the first human emotion I'd seen from him. You just went through a very traumatic experience. Are you up to making these decisions? It's true we have the final say, but as a whole the pack has to vote. I take their wishes into consideration when I decide the fate of other wolves. I am able if you are. Despite everything, I am no less of a loner than I was before I was taken. If anything, this experience has made me stronger. I was there. I saw everything firsthand. I know who is guilty and who is not. But the question that remains, are you going to believe me? Without hesitation he spoke. Of course I believe you, but your judgment may be impaired. Experiences like these tend to do extensional psychological damage. I would feel better if you were examined by Heath before you make any immediate decisions. That stung. I think Kieran understood that when his words made me flinch. It was as if he'd slapped me. You want me to go through a psychological evaluation? You think I'm crazy? Kieran looked more and more exhausted the longer this conversation continued. You were with them for a long time, Claire. Stockholm Syndrome isn't something I made up. It's a real symptom of being held against your will. You might feel like your loyalties lie with them, that you've created a home with the enemy. Before I had time to even think about it, the words were out of my mouth. How could you say that? My voice trembled. Please don't overreact, he begged. It's only a precaution. You're treating me like a traitor. This conversation, and what was once a happy reunion, had just taken a drastic turn for the worst. How did we get here? Claire, Kieran reached out for me, but I quickly jerked away. No. No. I turned back toward the house and stared up at the windows. I need to get out of here. I need to think. I'll come with you, he insisted. Alone, I added. You can't be alone. I just got you back. Alone, Kieran, I repeated. Unless you are going to tie me down to a chair, I'm going alone and you can't stop me. I didn't stop the tears once they finally fell. I think I needed to feel this. It made me think about everything. Was I overreacting to Kieran's request about seeing the doctor? Or should he have trusted me and my mental stability just by my mere declaration? Would I trust him if the roles were reversed? I'd like to think that I would. The faint sound of movement behind me alerted me I was no longer alone, if I ever was. I didn't bother to turn to see who it was. It was probably Dorian, or Leland, or one of the other wolves that Kieran usually assigned to watch and protect me. After a few more minutes of walking around Clint and Kaylin's home, the feet finally caught up to me. Are you okay? I was a little surprised by the voice that spoke. I looked sideways at Wyatt. Where had he been during this entire thing? I'm fine, I lied. He raised an eyebrow at me. You look like a mixture of hurt and anger. Are you sure you're fine? My shoulders dropped. What was the point in lying to him? I don't know. I'm just confused. He folded his hands behind his back as he kept his pace with me. Is this about what Kieran said? So you were there? I overheard from a safe distance. I'm waiting to talk to Kieran once everything has settled down. I got you out of underground pack safely, but I'm not sure he's forgiven me yet. There is nothing to forgive. You didn't betray him. You had to make a hard decision as an alpha. And it's a good thing you did too, or Axel may not have welcomed you with open arms when you showed up. How else would I have gotten out? Kieran can't see it that way yet. He's still blinded by his anger. He just needs some time to calm down. He grinned. But I'm afraid that with the way things just went down between you two, it's going to take more time for him to calm down. He's furious you walked off like that. Well, I'm furious too, so I guess that makes two of us. You'll work it out. Your wolves won't allow you two to stay mad at each other long. Their instincts will take over and they'll reconcile. I blushed. Hopefully not before I'm ready. At that, I decided to change the subject. This was not a conversation I wanted to have with Wyatt. What are we going to do about Axel? You know he got away. He looked down at the ground and contemplated what to say next. After a moment he looked back up. I don't know. Question a bunch of his wolves and hope we get some answers. And if that doesn't work, then things get really messy. Kieran's wolf isn't just going to let this go. It will drive him mad trying to find Axel. After everything with his parents and then you, he will make Axel suffer a slow death regardless of what he has to do to make it happen. I nodded. I guess I expected something like that. Are you going to tell him about you? He asked cautiously. There was carefulness to his voice, making sure to tread lightly on the subject. I guess I have to. Despite my feelings about Kieran right now, he deserves to know about his child. You should probably tell him before the good doctor does, or he'll think you were hiding it from him. I nodded. I know. I'll do it before we leave for our pack. That seemed to please him. Can I ask you something? Always, Luna. The formal title took me by surprise and I quickly realized I should be talking to him as a leader instead of a friend. As a Luna, I shouldn't be second-guessing my decisions. I should make them with confidence. Still, that didn't stop me from asking. Do you think I overreacted with Kieran? Should I have agreed to the evaluation without argument? Wyatt seemed to think about his words again before proceeding. You have to look at things from Kieran's perspective. He has to keep our pack safe. They look up to him and to you. Every decision he makes has a reason behind it. He doesn't do anything without reason. So he's trying to protect my image with the pack. He wants the pack to know without a shadow of a doubt that you are okay, and that being with Underground Pack for so long hasn't changed you. Everyone is going to be watching you more closely now, looking for signs you're about to break. So yes, Kieran is protecting you in his own way. It wouldn't hurt to give him a break. That made sense. I suppose he was on to something. Maybe you're right. Kieran is stressed. His wolf snapped a few days ago. We may have had a small victory today with the Underground Pack, but all that stress is going to come back in his search for Axel. We just have to lessen it as much as we possibly can. Kieran needs us just as much as we need him. I hadn't ever really thought of it like before. Despite being wolves, we are also human, and humans are not without flaws. We all need help at some point. Kieran included. You're right. Thanks, Wyatt. Sometimes you're really wise. He grinned. Well, not to brag, but I am the beater. I laughed. It was settled then. I would go find Kieran, and I would tell him I would see the doctor. If it helped ease his mind, I suppose it was my duty to him to do it. And I loved him, so I would swallow my pride if I had to. Chapter 31. I was awoken by a soft knock on the door. Sleep didn't come as easy nowadays. The slightest disturbances woke me without much effort. Lana and Keely were both there looking at me with happy, relieved smiles when I stumbled to open the door. Seeing them both there in front of me again almost broke me. I hadn't realized how much I missed them until now. Hey, Keely said softly, stepping in with Lana as I moved back from the door to let them in. Lana scooped me up in a quick tight hug before I could close the door. I returned it with a tighter hug of my own. When she let go, I let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cry. How did it go yesterday? Keely asked tentatively. Her hands were fidgety, her usual confidence waning. I slowly blinked the sleep from my eyes and took a seat in one of the room's stuffed, pin-stripped chairs. I picked at a loose thread on the arm as I considered her question. I had tried not to think too much about yesterday. Dr. Heath had been kind and respectful to me in his questioning and mental evaluation, but the shameful truth was it hurt my pride. I understood Kieran only did what he thought was right for me and the pack. He was protecting me too, but sometimes I had to remind myself of that. I glanced at the carefully made side of the bed where Kieran slept and realized he never came to bed last night, probably for my sake. His wolf must be going crazy. This was nothing new. It was fine. So, Lana started. Are you okay? I mean, did Heath clear you? I sighed. And here it was the truth. I knew I couldn't avoid it for long. I'm okay, I said. But Heath wants to see me a couple of times a week, as sort of a mental therapy session. But he doesn't think you're any danger to the pack? Keely asked. I looked down. No. Just to myself. Lana let out a harsh breath. What? They think you're going to hurt yourself. Keely shrieked. I shrugged. I suppose after a traumatic experience like I've just been through, it is possible. But you're not, right? Keely asked. Lana hit her on the shoulder. Of course she isn't. She wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't. And I wish I could tell them the reason why. Hey, I stood up suddenly. You two want to go for a run? What, now? Lana blinked, peering out the window. All this talk about my mental stability is bumming me out. I just want to go out and run and enjoy my freedom for once. I paced across the floor and picked out a swimsuit from among my clothes. Come on. I want to go to the swimming hole. They both exchanged surprised looks, but they quickly vanished and were replaced by wide smiles. Go get your suits, I said. I raced Lana and Keely through the woods, taking in every sight and smell and touch that I could. I jumped over some brush and rock and logs, breathed in the fresh air, and welcomed the rush of air through my fur. Today, here in the woods with my friends, I felt truly free. No Dr. Heath today. No questing, no studying eyes and no looks of pity. If everyone kept looking at me like I was broken, then I would never stop believing I wasn't. I just needed some normalcy in my life again. Lana came up on me quick and leaped in front, never slowing her pace. She let out a bark of laughter. I had a feeling that since my disappearance things around here had been tense, and I wondered how long it had been since they did something as freeing as this. I wasn't the only one things had changed for. I felt a bond with my friends again, something I hadn't felt since I'd been back. I pushed ahead with my paws even faster, gaining distance on Lana when Keely sped by us both and danced around a tree, nearly knocking Lana on her side. I howled and sped on. In seconds I was back in the lead and nearing the lake. I was the first to hop in, taking in a few laps in my wolf form. My friends soon followed. When I changed back into my human form, I dunked under the water and slipped on the red swimsuit tied around my leg. When Keely came up for air, she laughed. Lana splashed her with water and swam out toward the middle of the lake. You were right, this was a good idea. I think this was needed. I grinned at Keely. Well, I mean, I am your Luna. I do know what's best after all. You should get Kieran out here. He needs a break from all his attack planning and revenge seeking. He's been pretty tense. I don't think that's the only thing that's making him tense. Kieran hadn't been to our room to sleep in 3 days. I'd rarely seen him. When he did sleep, it wasn't with me. I knew what he was doing. Giving me some space. I wish he knew that wasn't what I wanted. Not when I had something important to tell him. He'd been locked up in the pack building so much. I didn't know when would be the best time to share the big news. Hey! Look who it is. Keely called out toward the woods on the opposite side of us. Rhea, Alpha Sawyer's mate, was walking over with a towel thrown across her shoulder. She was grinning at Keely. I thought packs weren't supposed to cross over onto another pack's land without permission from the Alpha, I said. Keely turned toward me. This is still their land. Well, part of it anyway. At least that side over there. She pointed with her head. So it's on the territory line. I should have remembered this piece of information. I hadn't been gone that long. Yes. This is the only place Kieran lets the packs mingle with each other. He and Alpha Sawyer are working out an alliance agreement, and if it goes through, we'll be seeing more of them. Which I wouldn't complain about. I saw her grinning past Rhea now and waving at someone else. There were more wolves and people coming out of the woods by the second. Some were getting in the water, and some laying out blankets, and sunbathing in what was left of summer sun. Percy's eyes left Keely's and landed on me. After the initial surprise at seeing me there, his smile got brighter. He looked back at Keely and winked and picked up his speed. She blushed when she looked at me again. Is there something you'd like to tell me about you and my cousin? She tensed at the question. What do you mean? What I mean is I'm not blind. I can clearly see something is happening. No, it's not. There's nothing happening. We're just friends. I crossed my arm and raised my eyebrows. You know Kieran is going to kill him when he finds out, right? She laughed. Please. He's too oblivious to notice anything. His anger has made him less attentive to my activities lately. But you see, I'm here now and I know Pierce, and this is a really, really bad idea. He was, after all, flirting with Lana the last time he was here. We're not doing anything, just hanging out. Pierce jumped in the water and swam across the lake to us. And he was smiling like an idiot at Keely. Yep. I was in trouble if I didn't stop this. Kieran would flip out if he knew. He stopped in front of me and threw his arm over Keely's shoulders. She giggled. I eyed them carefully. Well, if it isn't the missing Luna, here in the flesh. I was wondering when I'd see you again. I frowned. You don't seem worried or concerned. Should I be? I thought about it. That was all the looks I'd been receiving lately. I kind of thought it shared among everyone. I don't know. I mean, I was kidnapped and all. He chuckled. And you're back, safe and sound. I knew you would be. You're not exactly the damsel and distress type. I knew you'd figure out a way to rescue yourself. I had help, I pointed out. But you're here nonetheless. And I'm glad you're back. Everyone around here has been on edge for weeks. I hope you gave those bastards that took you hell. I wish. Daniel's dead, I mumbled. He didn't look surprised. Yeah, I heard. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It seems unreal that he's gone. I nodded. It did seem that way. Daniel did a lot of bad things, but I don't believe he was in his right mind. Those things he did weren't him at all. I wish he could have gotten help instead of death. But I can also understand why Kieran did it. If he was taken, I can't say that I'd do anything different. Come on. Let's swim, Keely said. No talk about Daniel. It creeps me out talking about the dead. Quickly Pierce swooped down and lifted Keely in the air, and threw her into the water. He laughed when she shrieked and swam after her. Shaking my head, I sighed. Perhaps my warning wasn't clear enough. Walking back to the pack house, the wind picked up, causing us to shiver, and wish we had brought beach towels to dry off with. People and wolves were milling about the territory. Thankfully none of them gave me their pitted looks. I'm not sure I could bear it anymore. In fact, I was rarely looked at all. Maybe they didn't think to look for the Luna out and about so soon. I was glad they were none the wiser. The few pitted looks I did receive, I did my best to ignore them. Having Lana and Keely here definitely helped me feel normal again. But it also made me miss Jennifer. Felix had taken her to see her parents a few days before we came back, and wouldn't be back until tomorrow. I'm sure Felix gave her the news I was back. I looked over my shoulder at Keely and Lana. I'll catch up with you two later. I'm gonna go change and find Kieran. They both nodded. Good luck getting him to talk, Keely said. He hasn't acknowledged my presence since he's been back. He always brushes me off. Well, I'm not giving him a choice. We need to talk. Just as I'd said, I changed into some shorts and a t-shirt. I immediately took note of how snug they were fitting lately. I should probably buy some new clothes soon, before nothing fits me anymore. On my way to the pack building, my stomach growled and I silently cursed myself for not grabbing breakfast this morning. I was responsible for another person now, and I had to take better care of myself. And my child. I threw open the door and stepped inside the building. There were a lot more people in the building than on a normal basis. Everyone noticed me within seconds and bowed their heads in respect and sympathy. I tried not to growl. Where is Kieran? I asked Chase, who was standing closest to me. He's in an interrogation right now. Would you like me to interrupt him? I could hear the apprehension in his voice. We both knew that would be disrespectful to an alpha, so I declined. I wouldn't want to get him in trouble. He's been in there a while. He should be finished soon. If you'd like to wait, Leland, Dorian, he's all yours. See him back to his cell. You may have to carry him. I'm not sure he can walk. My eyes shot across the room to Kieran, Leland and Dorian. I hadn't spoken to Dorian since that day in the woods, but I wanted to make sure he knew it wasn't his fault. I hoped he wasn't racked with guilt. They made out of the room quickly, just as Kieran noticed my presence. Everything in the room quieted. I cleared my throat and stepped forward. Can I speak to you for a minute? He shifted his weight and looked around the room before settling his gaze back on me. Can it wait? I'm kind of busy today. You're always busy, I said flatly. I'll find you tonight. We can talk then. He reached out and took some papers from another wolf and started discussing something in their business tones, which made my skin boil. I clenched my fists. Bring the next one in and we'll get started, he ordered just as they started to walk off. The room quickly fell back into chatter and shuffling, as if that whole scene didn't just happen, and no one looked back up from their work. This time I did growl. Everyone out. I ordered. All heads snapped back up immediately, and quickly they sought out Kieran, who held barely constrained surprise from my outburst. I said out, I repeated. Now? Kieran didn't say anything to them, only stared at me, unsure of my next move. After a moment, everyone finally cleared out, not really sure what else to do. Thank you, I mumbled after the door closed. Not that anyone could hear me. Claire, Kieran said carefully, like the wounded animal everything saw me to be. He took a few steps forward then stopped, afraid to come any closer. What's this about? If it's because I've not been coming home, I've not had time. I've been busy. So you've said. I sighed. I don't want to talk about that right now. I have something bigger to discuss with you. Well, you have the floor now, so you might as well go ahead. A smile barely tugged on his lips. If I hadn't been so angry, I would have laughed. How generous of you. I pressed on. I need all of this to stop. I turned with open palms around the room. This is taking up so much of your time, and right now I need you. Probably more than ever. He looked down at the ground in what mimicked shame. I know. I'm sorry I haven't been there. What you've been through. I just want to. His hands balled into fists in barely restrained anger. I'm trying to fix this and I can't be around you right now. I flinched back from his words. I don't know what I'd been expecting him to say, but it definitely wasn't that. Why? My voice caught. Am I damaged to you now? Don't you want me anymore? I swallowed, the words burning in my throat. That got his full attention. His eyes snapped up to mine, frustration burning behind them. No, of course that's not it. My eyes were watering. Then what is it? A rush of air left him and he deflated. I failed you. As a mate and as an alpha of this pack. What? I blinked. You were taken right out from under my nose and I couldn't even get you back from a pack of rouges. Now I'm trying like hell to make it up to you. He crossed the rest of the space between us and took my face in his hands. I'm going to find and kill Axel if it's the last thing that I do. I swear it to you. And I want him dead too, but more important than that, I want you. I want our family. Family? He said. He squinted his eyes and looked at me with question. Our family, I said with a hand on my stomach. Surprise quickly took over his beautiful features. He almost smiled, but reined it in, not sure if all of this was real. You mean? He looked down at my stomach. I found out just before I left Underground Pack. His hands left my face and found my stomach and he laughed. A laugh so loud that it vibrated through me and filled me with warmth. We have a baby. He said, meeting my eyes. The first amount of joy I'd seen from him since before I was taken. Are you sure? Positive, I smiled. Literally. In an instant he had my face again, his lips finding mine. As my arms wrapped around him, he quickly pulled away, with a smile. We have to spread the news. But come on. We can talk later. But right now we need to give this pack some good news. We all need it. Especially me. He started to the door, then came to an abrupt halt and turned toward me. I love you, Claire Warren. I melted. I love you too, Kieran Knight. Very much. Don't get left behind in the chase for independence. Hit subscribe and ring the bell for alerts on the next adventure.